All right, moving on to NBL. All right, so the season's over, pro. Melbourne with a wall-to-wall finish in first place, by far the best team throughout the regular season. They've had some ups and downs, but for the most part, just cruise control. They finished first. Perth, second place, and well-deserved rebound after a horrific start. They were in all sorts of problems in the first 10 games. You had Bryce Cotton's wife making Facebook posts, and you had this and you had that. They've worked their way out nicely. Tasmania, Scott Roth smoking those cigars in third. They get the playing home game against Illawarra, who are in fourth. So Tatum's done a fantastic job in getting them from, I think they were second/last for the period of the season. They've got into fourth place. They will play Tasmania in a play-in. The Kings scrape in. The much celebrated demise of the Sydney Kings might have to wait a while still, unfortunately, at least another week or two. But they somehow scrape into the top six with a win over a depleted Southeast Melbourne, and thankfully got their percentage up enough that then New Zealand losing to Adelaide bumped them down to 6. So we could actually somehow pull a home final. So we get to make some money too, pro, which is not always nice in that 5-6 battle. Let's chat team performances of the 4 teams that did not make it. Southeast Melbourne, look, they had an injury bug, mainly in the last quarter of the year, last third of the year. So they don't get a full pass. I had them picked outside of the 6 in my preseason picks, and I've got those somewhere. I need to find them and revert back to them. But Paul Smith and I do, and our ownership group do our picks with the whole league, and we put them all in like a little group chat so no one can change them. And I had them outside because I just don't like where they are. I think a new coach, I think Mike Kelly should have his opportunity to bring his own players in this coming season, I believe. They'll probably give him one more year to figure that out. Creaky's contracted next season. Can he carry this team is a question. The jury's out, in my opinion. He's been there now, year 5 or 6. He's been their mainstay, puts up great numbers, but can he win? That's the question mark you have with him. It's the one year they had the chance to do it was when they absolutely choked against Melbourne United, which was 2 or 3 years ago in that COVID year. They should have won that series, and they choked it, and that's as close as they've been. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how they reshape their roster and what they do. Creek's still a mainstay, still a top 10 player in the league, but is he your guy long term? Is it kind of fizzling out now? Maybe everyone needs greener pastures. Who knows? So I'll be interested to see how they go. Adelaide, they fired CJ Bruton around about mid-season. Scott Ninnis has come in and done a fantastic job. Professional finish. I tremendous kudos to them. That season could have went many different ways, and they continued to fight. They were technically in contention to come and maybe take a playoff spot, but it was a pretty tough task for them to get from how far back they were. I think Ninnis will my pick is he's going to keep that job. That's my mail. I think he's going to keep that head coaching job. How long they sign him for, what they do, I don't know, but I think he's going to keep that job for at least another season. I think he's done a fantastic job with just having them be professional and win. DJ Vasiljevic, a decent acquisition, not shooting a great clip, but some scoring punch they needed. I think that was a nice acquisition. They've locked him up long term. Can they win when it matters? They were one of those teams that it's easier to play when you're mathematically knocked out of finals contention. No one's expecting you to be there. It's easier to play the spoiler all the time. Let's see it next season from game 1. That's probably the question mark with them. Cairns, Taipans, they look like a complete blow-up of their roster. A lot of interesting things have gone down the last couple of weeks. I'm not sure what's going on in their camp, but Tahir McCall has given basically gave statements before the game saying he's going to enjoy this as his last game, even though nothing was formally announced that he's gone. I think he formally announced it for him, basically saying, I've enjoyed my time here and blah, blah, blah. He was a guy that would coach them. He coached them in the preseason. Ford, the head coach Ford, let him coach them in the preseason. Really tight with Ford. Something's happened there. They've had a huge falling out. They must have had a fight or an argument or gone to blows. I'm not sure. Something's happened there. Pat Miller gave an interview after their last game, pro, which was over the weekend, and basically spilled the beans for the whole season. I don't know if you thought that was his exit interview, but it was just like, we had so much problems in the locker room. There was so much problems. There was infighting. So I'm not sure why he did that, but he was visibly frustrated. But even the commentators were like, whoa. They asked a question about how you think the game went. and he gave a whole spiel about how terrible their team was as far as being tight in the locker room. So is a 40 Allure rubbing thin up there in Cairns? Who knows? But they're going to probably look to make some changes roster-wise, definitely. Brisbane, a better season for them, but still not. They just missed out on the playoffs by percentage. Aaron Baines' number will come off their books this season, which, you know, Bainesy was on rumored to be $1 million a year or around about there, which severely hampered the imports they could bring in. The imports were close to irrelevant for that squad. That actually competed pretty well for being close to a playoff team. So I think they'll address that and get some good imports. I think they can be better. Harrison, their starting center, shining light, probably in contention for the most improved player. And more minutes for Rocco, the young next star there, the big 7-footer over there. Showed flashes. They only really played him, you know, in 5 to 6 minute bursts throughout games because they had obviously Baines and they had Harrison. They had two bigs in front of him. So it'd be interesting to see if Brisbane even bring Baines back, what Baines does. But they're trending in the right direction, which we haven't really said for Brisbane in a long, long time. All NBL teams for me, I'm going to go with some controversial picks, but my All NBL first team going Chris Goulding, Bryce Cotton, Gary Clark, Lamb, and Jalen Adams. I think Adams' second half of the season were elite. His first half arguably weren't great, but I think he deserves to be an NBL first nod. All NBL second team, I got Mitch Creek. I can't have him in the first. His numbers are elite. I can't have him in the first team. If you finish dead last or outside of the 6, you can't be in the first team, in my opinion. PJC from New Zealand, Sobey, Luala Chul I'm putting in there because United deserve 2 players in the top 10 because they're dominated from start to finish. And I'm going with McVeigh, just based on Tasmania's season. I think they could have had a few other guys, but he was probably their most consistent throughout the year, and they deserve a player in the top 10 just based on their performance finishing third. So some controversial ones in there, but that's fine. MVP, Bryce Cotton, just don't worry about the rest of them. That's by far one of his most dominant seasons, bar probably the first 8 or 9 games. He's been on an absolute tear and deserves it. I don't think it's even close. PJC's somehow in the MVP vote. I think that he was arguably their second best player on that team till Lamb doing his Achilles has hurt them, but he's in the mix and Golding's in the final 3 with him. But I think Bryce has won that easily. Defensive player of the year, I'm going with Shea Ely. I think he deserves it just based on their performance, finishing first wire to wire. Deserves that nod. Most improved player, I'm going with Jalen Galloway. I think he's had a fantastic season. I think he's gone from a relative unknown to playing NBL 1 to working on his craft in the off-season. Harrison's the other one that's in the mix, but they're not in the top 6, so I'm going to give the nod on Galloway just on team performance, and I think his room for growth. He's a genuine NBA chance in the future, and I think he's going to be a future boomer in the short to near term once that aging roster starts to fizzle out. Coach of the year, controversial one, Trent tells me, but I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go with John Rillie with the Perth Wildcats. I think Dean Vickerman's roster in Melbourne, he has by far the best roster, the deepest roster. You could somewhat argue they should be first. Some would argue that with Perth, but they had all kinds of issues in the first 10 games of the season. They had all kinds of issues. People were asking for his head. I've loved the way he's navigated these last 20-odd games and just got them focused on winning and got them from – they were out of the plane at one point, I think, early in the season to now being a formidable second-place team. So I'm going to give it to him. Tatum as well, definitely in the mix for me, but I just think that not coaching the whole season hurts that. When you go coaching votes game to game, he only coached half the season, but he definitely should be in the mix, taking them from second last to a playoff position. I think if Tatum coached the whole season from start to finish and they finish 4th, no brainer, he gets it. But I'm going to go with John Rillie. So all you Perth Wildcats fans that think I'm always hating on you guys, and I try to keep bias aside, even though your fans are absolute bananas. And probably will struggle to listen to this podcast unless there's subtitles. But John Rillie is my vote for you guys, and I think that's two Wildcats. And the MVP, I'm supposed to hate Bryce. I can't put him as MVP, but I did. So that's that. 6th man of the year, Ian Clark. Although in a few injuries there with Melbourne United, he's a starter for most teams in the league. They've got him coming off the bench. He's an absolute baller. Whenever they had they had runs where their offense dried up or whatnot this season, he would just come off the bench and make some big shots for him. And the Next Gen Award, probably the worst award in professional sports. Is it 26? 26?
I think it's 25.
So probably the NBL changed the Rookie of the Year award to this thing called the Next Generation Award, which basically it's 25 and under players can win it. Don't ask me why. It's the dumbest award in sports. So like Frolling's my vote and he's going to win it. He still has a chance to win it for another year, I think, until he hits 25. And he won it last year.
Awesome.
And it's just, so they've gone away from Rookie of the Year, which I have no clue why. They're all my picks for the awards.